Hi everybody, so you've got a little mini project to work on now, and when it starts it should look really plain and basic, like hopefully this. Well, actually it's a good thing it's not working because it means I've not put in the code that happens when it executes. So if we go to the student tracker.java, we want to happen is we want a new student info JFrame to appear, and we can do sf.setVisible true, so that we can actually get our frame when it executes to make one of those become visible, and it looks like this. So we have 4 buttons, no code attached to any of those yet, and we have a JTable which has just been completely left basic. If we look at what we've got to include on that table, by looking at the task or the CSV file, you can see that it's 4 columns: student name, year group, test name, and then the percentage. So if we go back to the design view, we right click on it and choose table contents, leave user specified, go to columns. We can go in and just double click on these, type student name here. We can go back to the next one and change the year group, the next one to test, and then the final one to be percentage. And click close. You'll see that the columns there change automatically. So when it runs now, this frame becomes visible. We've still got the buttons that don't actually allow us to click anything. So that is task 1. We've got the table prepared to display that CSV information, and literally all I did was drag those components onto the panel. What do we need to do now? Well, we need to do code that is going to read and store the information in the 2D array, and it's going to be called on the initialization of this frame when it loads. Now you can see where that happens on, if we look at this part, this init components here. So this code is called when the frame loads. So before we do that, we're going to make a 2D array that's going to be of strings. Even though some of it's integers, we can convert them. So we've got a string array which we'll call all student info, and that's a new string, and we'll just make it 50 possible students, each of them having 4 in there, 4 different columns to store for them. So obviously this is a 2D array definition, and we want to have maybe an int num students is obviously equal to 0 at the beginning, which we'll use to track the index of where we're going to add our next student to, really. So what we can do next in the public student info, which is what happens to be called, so we've got the initializing of the components. What we want to do there is maybe create a new private method that's going to read the CSV, which I'll just call read CSV. Now that's going to immediately give us an error because it's basically saying where is the CSV, and you can see here it's actually given us the option to create that. So let's see if that worked. I've actually used that. There we go. We can either use that to type it as to create it for us, or type it itself. I normally just type them, and I haven't actually used that part before, but it did it for us. I've just taken the try catch part out anyway. For the read CSV file, I'm going to look up my reading from one of the previous tasks we did, which was in the music display task, which we probably did a wee while ago. So go back into my sources, and it'll be in my panel, and have lots of it here. So I'll just take it over a piece at a time. So we'll get the buffered reader, and we'll go back to the student info, and I'll just put that in there. You can see it's going to set up the imports for us. Now you can see here that this is all default things really that's going to be the same in any um, buffered reader that we use. Now the only part I need to change from the music.csv, I need to leave the slash as I need to figure out the name of my CSV file, and if I look inside the folder that contains all the Java files, it's called student results.csv, so student results.csv, and that sets up the path to allow us to read that. Looking back at the music panel, I'm just going to grab this full try catch, and you can see the next part I need after that as well. That's going to try and read the file and throw exceptions if it can't find the file or if it tries to read something that's not going to work. So let's just paste that in, and again it's going to put the imports in for us properly. So let's see what's going to be the same. Well, we're going to create this buffered reader that's using the path we've just created to that file. We need a row for every row that we're going to read in. We're going to use this conditional loop to repeat through all the loops. We don't know how many there are yet. We could change this, in fact, because we kind of limited ourselves to 50. We could change this part here to say and the number of students or the number of tests that we've read in is still less than 50. We still want to split that row up, and then we need to do something here with our counter, and we need to do something here with our previous 2D array which we use. So our new student array here is called all student info. So let's copy paste that to save on spelling mistakes. So all student info, all student info, all student info, and we know that we've got 4 columns, so it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. It's data 0, 1, 2, 3. These are just what's split up by the commas. And our counter that we used in the previous program is now number of students. So number of students. We'll increase that counter. Now that's the index that we want to add that next student at. You can see here it's not always a great idea to copy paste everything. This was obviously default code that auto-generated when I was writing the previous task. So you can see there now that when we run that, we shouldn't get any errors, hopefully, when we do it, but you wouldn't know it's worked because you can't actually see anything being displayed yet. If you want to test it, we can do in here system.out.println, and we will print out all student info array num students, semicolon, and let's run it again. And looking in the output here, when it loads up, you can see there it's just throwing out all of these different strings. Now it's displaying it weird because I didn't tell it to print out the string. That's it, printing out one record, one row from the 2D array. If you want to see the student name that's been read in, let's put index 0 after it. Stop that from running. Stop that from running. Run it again. And now this time you'll see that it's read in all of those different student names, the same that are in the file. So let's quit that because it's not displaying in the table for us yet. So that code there is all the code that's reading in and storing from a CSV file. After that, we want to update the table. We want to display the information in the table. So I'm going to write another function that we'll just call update table. It's going to display everything. You can see it's got that error again of saying you've tried to write a method called update table that doesn't exist. And just like we did with the previous one, I'm just going to create a private method that's private to this class. It's got no return type, and it's called update table. Put in our brackets. And again, we've done this in lots of different programs, so I'm not going to memorize. I'm going to reuse my old programs. So let's go back and look at the music panel. I believe actually has it. Yeah, we've got the update table here. We've got the search function there to update the table. Basically, this is to display all. So here we have that code there, and we can maybe just add comments for it to explain it to ourselves in future. So I'll paste that there. So what we do in the code here, so we're getting the default model of the table. Now that's what we changed earlier on to give it 4 rows. Anytime this is clicked, basically this next line of code is it empties the table of anything. So that this basically clears the table. We want to set up a new row to add to the table. Now this previous one 3, obviously we want to have 4. The previous one looked round for the counter and going through all music. Now, I'm not a fan of retyping things. I have similar stuff here, and when I can, I would get it to type that. But let's just be a bit quicker about it. So we've got num students, so it's all music. Or all student info rather. It will be all student info, and then our third row will be all student info at the third index, and then we want to add that row to the table. Ours is going to loop for the number of students. So hopefully now when we run it, it's going to read the CSV file, we'll get the output on here, and automatically it already displays them, which is basically what happens when you press the display all button. That functionality is just being called at that point. So what else do you need to do now? There will be a couple of challenges and extra tasks for you. Display by test, you could go one better by having a drop-down list of the different test names so that we can click and select to just to display those. That would be the best way of doing that. However, if you want to click it and allow us to test it, to type in either IB 4, 5, 6 or 7 and only display those. Similarly, display by student should allow me to type in a student name and only display their tests. And give analysis, we want you to come up with some of the parts that I will do there. So can I click and have an analysis of year 12? Can I click and have an analysis of year 13? Can I click and have an analysis of just, I guess, the whole class percentage and then by test percentage? So you could have several options built into that give analysis one. Now what would be a really good advanced task here is if there was a button that loaded up a new form which allowed us to type in a new test entirely, that wrote back to the CSV file would be very close to a mini IA project, which would be a really, really useful feature to try and create. So read what the task says to do, because there'll be more information you've got to add in there. I will just slowly scroll through the code that I've added in so that you can add it into yours. So we've created a 2D array and a counter to see how many students there are. We added a method call to read the CSV whenever the student info panel is created. We added code to that read CSV that was very generic. It's very much the same code we'll use for all file reading and writing. We added the try catch in case there was any errors when we read the file. We used a conditional loop to loop through the file. We split the row up based on the comma. We added all that into our 2D array. We just did a little print out here to show it in the system out to check it was working. We put in the parts that catch the exception. Then we called another method to update the table, and in the update table method we used the previous code we already have, which is basically looping through things and adding them to a row in the table so that we can see it displayed. Very straightforward, and again you can hopefully see that a lot of code reuse going in there.